This is Sensor Studio, touching the ever-present clouds. President Trump announced on the 30th that he signed a $450 billion, about 626 trillion won trade deal with Korea. The Korea-United States tariff negotiations have concluded, but much debate remains. Let's examine this issue more closely. President Trump announced on the 30th that a trade agreement was reached to reduce mutual tariffs with Korea from 25% to 15%, and they agreed to hold a summit with President Lee Jae-myung within 2 weeks. First, let's take a look at what the tariff negotiations were about. Korea agreed to invest approximately $350 billion, over $188 trillion, in United States controlled and owned investment projects. They agreed to purchase $100 billion, $139 trillion worth of energy products, including liquefied natural gas. The United States applied a 15% tariff exclusively to Korean products, exempting American goods. President Trump stated that Korea has agreed to make a significant additional investment, with the amount to be announced during President Lee Jae-myung's bilateral summit visit within 2 weeks. From a $350 billion investment, our expected profit is roughly 10%. You can see this from a post by Howard Lutnick, the United States Secretary of Commerce, on social media platform X. Howard Lutnick, the United States Secretary of Commerce, stated that reciprocal tariffs and automobile tariffs on Korea will be set at 15%. He also stated that following President Trump's instructions, Korea will invest $350 billion in the United States, with 90% of the profits returning to the United States. He said Korea has agreed to buy $100 billion in liquefied natural gas and other energy products from the United States over the next 3.5 years as part of its plan to purchase American energy during the rest of President Trump's term. However, what's interesting is that although they promised to invest $350 billion in the United States, the time frame for this investment was not clearly specified. This part could be applied favorably. In semiconductors and pharmaceuticals, Korea will receive most favored nation treatment. However, they said steel, aluminum, and copper are not included and will remain unchanged. On July 7th, President Trump sent President Lee Jae-myung a proposal threatening a 25% tariff on Korean products if an agreement was not reached by August 1st. Since then, Korea has been negotiating with the United States to minimize reciprocal and item-specific tariffs on products like automobiles, steel, and aluminum. They put in tremendous effort and successfully reached an agreement before August 1st, lowering the tariffs to 15%. Opinions on this vary widely based on perspective. The presidential office announced that in the Korea-United States tariff negotiations, they agreed not to open the market to 30-month-old American beef and rice. They refused further concessions on guaranteed wheat quotas, defense costs, or major purchases of United States weapons. Compared to Japan, which opened its rice market to the United States or NATO countries that agreed to buy American weapons in bulk, Korea is considered to have fared relatively well in trade negotiations. The 15% mutual tariff matches the level agreed upon by Japan and the European Union, who concluded trade talks before us. Therefore, Korea, which competes with Japan and the European Union in the United States market, is at least not disadvantaged on the surface. However, some say the investment scale is too large. Japan has pledged to invest $550 billion, $764 trillion, and the European Union has promised to invest $600 billion, $833.3 trillion in the United States. Korea will invest $350 billion, $488 trillion in the United States. The varying investment amounts by country appear to be related to economic size differences. However, some claim that Korea is investing a relatively large sum based on its gross domestic product. Korea and Japan's economies differ by more than double, but their investment amounts only differ by around 1.5 times. So there are quite a few people who point this out. Above all, unlike Japan or the European Union, Korea currently has a free trade agreement with the United States. Due to this, there are some drawbacks compared to Japan and the European Union. While there are some disappointments, many also praised Korea's smooth handling of the situation. Given President Trump's distinctive coercive negotiation approach, some analysts believe this Korea-United States negotiation is significant for avoiding the worst-case scenario. Experts note that Korea had to present a substantial investment offer to President Trump, as he had already secured significant investment commitments from Japan and the European Union in a similar manner. Japan pledged $550 billion and the European Union $200 billion in response to United States demands, leading many to say it was inevitable for Korea to secure a similar level of cooperation with the United States. Considering all factors, it's more precise to state that the negotiation reached a pragmatic compromise to protect practical interests in the global trade environment, rather than simply concluding that Korea was unilaterally pushed back. The MASGA project, a Korea-United States shipbuilding cooperation project, was the most interesting to the United States and played a crucial role in concluding the negotiations. Out of the $350 billion United States Investment Fund, $150 billion will be allocated as a dedicated fund for the shipbuilding industry. What about the MASGA project? It involves constructing new United States shipyards, training personnel, reviving the shipbuilding supply chain, and conducting maintenance and repairs. The negotiation team stated that the project will proceed as our own business, based on our company's needs. The United States shipbuilding industry is currently in an extremely dire state, on the verge of collapse. The rapidly growing Chinese Navy poses a threat to the United States Navy. But the problem is that the gap between the United States Navy and the Chinese Navy is gradually narrowing, and that's a major concern. Currently, it's not an exaggeration to say that the United States has almost lost its shipbuilding capability. When it comes to shipbuilding, it's one of the industries that's quite difficult for developed countries to foster. It's an industry that demands a large workforce. But since labor costs are high in developed countries, shipbuilding isn't that big in most of them. Still, they need to maintain their shipbuilding industry because it's directly connected to the defense industry, especially the Navy, so even if it runs at a loss, they don't let it go bankrupt. But the United States missed out on this part. Since the Cold War, the United States has often prioritized supporting the financial industry over manufacturing during economic crises. That's why most of the shipyards in the United States ended up going bankrupt, and even the shipbuilding capabilities that the United States used to be proud of collapsed. That's what happened. United States Naval Intelligence Office analysis suggests that China's shipbuilding capacity is up to 232 times greater than the United States, highlighting the collapse of the American shipbuilding industry. For example, about 70% of China's warships have been launched since 2010. However, due to the shipbuilding industry's decline, only about 25% of United States Navy warships have been built in that period as construction has slowed. This is quite a serious problem. Analyses suggest China's latest Type 055 improved destroyer has combat capabilities comparable to the United States Arleigh Burke-class destroyers. China is rapidly producing these, potentially allowing them to surpass the United States' overwhelming performance advantage. The United States Navy Intelligence Agency's analysis indicates that the quality of Chinese warships is approaching that of the United States Navy. China is predicted to surpass the United States in vertical launch system, a key metric for naval power, by 2027. The United States has 9,900 vertical launch system, missile launchers on warships compared to China's 4,200 vertical launch system. But it is said that China will surpass this in 2027. The United States Navy currently relies on aircraft carriers for operations. Since modern naval battles are centered around aircraft carriers, the United States with its powerful aircraft carrier and submarine forces may have the upper hand. However, the future for this looks bleak. Firstly, due to a lack of shipyards and maintenance staff, maintaining the warships is challenging. When this happens, even if there are many aircraft carriers and submarines, their operational capability declines. A 2022 United States Government Accountability Office report stated that from 2015 to 2019, over 50% of aircraft carriers and 3 submarines were unusable each year due to delayed repairs and maintenance. In other words, more than 6 aircraft carriers are effectively out of commission. And there are some people who say that if a big war like World War II breaks out, we can just build shipyards and produce ships like crazy. During World War II, there were more than 30 large shipyards, but now there are only 7. This occurred because, as previously explained, we sacrificed manufacturing industries during every economic crisis. Consequently, we lost all the crucial personnel too. On top of that, it's just not realistic to think we can revive these elements just because a war breaks out. What couldn't be done in peacetime can't be done during wartime either. As seen with Hanwha Group's acquisition and operation of the Philly shipyard, Korean shipbuilders are poised to make significant contributions to the United States shipbuilding industry. Korean companies are practically the only ones capable of acquiring and operating United States shipyards or forming joint ventures with major American shipbuilders. Rebuilding the shipbuilding industry to its former glory requires long-term investment in various areas, unlike a game that can be completed in a year or two. This negotiation could impact future Korea-United States relations and the restructuring of the global supply chain. Expanding cooperation in strategic industries like shipbuilding, semiconductors, and energy could potentially unite Korea's technological capabilities with America's capital, forming a novel economic alliance. Anyway, the tariff negotiations with the United States have been concluded. Some say the negotiations went well, while others say they did not. What are your thoughts on this tariff negotiation? Share in the comments below. Thanks for watching.